Well, according to the executive director of Anacostia Coordinating Council, it's a nonprofit focused on the revitalization of Anacostia. Wards 7 and 8 are significantly undercounted right now. I spoke with him earlier today about why that's the case and what that could mean for funding in those wards. I also spoke to the Census Bureau to see how DC is doing in terms of the count compared to the region and the country.
For every person in the District of Columbia who is not counted in the census, we lose $40,000 per person over the course of 10 years.
Philip Pinnell is the executive director of the Anacostia Coordinating Council, an area of D.C. that he says has a number of hard-to-count populations.
We are demographically the youngest ward. We have the highest percentage of residents under the age of 18. And so when our household is not counted in the census, we know there are a number of children who are not counted.
Without an accurate count, Pinnell explains that planning for programs is very difficult, especially in a community that he says desperately needs the money.
How do we make plans for schools? How can we intelligently plan feeding programs, recreational programs, if we don't know exactly how many people need to be served?
Another community that Pinnell highlights as being hard to count: returning citizens, a community that he says could benefit greatly from federally funded programs subsidized by the census.
Unfortunately, the federal funding that is based on where people are during the census, those dollars are kept in those communities where these correctional facilities are, and those funds do not follow the returning citizens.
So how are census counts in DC, Maryland, and Virginia compared to the country? I reached out to Michael Cook, chief of the Public Information Office for the U.S. Census, to find out.
Nationally, 95.4% of the country has been enumerated or counted, either through self-response or people that have responded to that door knock. Maryland and Virginia, as a state, are a little bit higher, a tad higher than DC. So DC is at 93.9% total enumeration. Maryland is right at 96.3% as of today. And then Virginia is slightly ahead at 95.7%.
The U.S. Constitution mandates that the country count its population once every 10 years. And when the census isn't filled out by a household, then it falls into the purview of the Census Non-Response Follow-up Operations Team. And Bruce, they go door to door to make calls to make sure that those unreported houses actually get counted. So as of today, Cook says that his team has contacted 84.8% of those households, Bruce.